Four-door Skylines. That's something which I don't really talk about that much on the channel, but it's a category of motoring and a subcategory almost of JDM cars which I have a huge amount of love for. Now, you're not going to find a four-door Skyline or even any four-door JDM car on my top 50 favourites list. However, I do have a whole lot of love and appreciation for what they're capable of. And of course, although we don't have as many four-door JDM variants in the Gran Turismo franchise still, we do have some, or at least we did up until GT Sport. On GT6 even, we still had, for instance, two Blitz R34 drift cars, which are, of course, both based on the four-door R34 Skyline. Now, this one is not an R34, this is an R33, pretty obviously, of course, and this is the Autech 40th Anniversary Edition, so it's a little bit more special, but at the same time it doesn't have a crazy body kit or an insane livery or even a huge rear wing. The rear wing is much more subtle than it would be on the GTR Coupe. But don't let that fool you, and don't let the extra doors fool you either. In a similar way to my personal favourite Integra from Honda, the Integra DC2 DB8, which is the super rare four-door version, this car is kind of a sleeper, because as much as the Skyline is respected, as much as the GTR is respected, there's something about having four doors which makes people lower their guard. They assume, wrongly for them, but very fortunately for you if you're driving one, that you're not going to be quite as good, you're not going to be quite as fast. Surely not. There's space for the kids. How could it be as fast? Well, 716 horsepower. That's how it can be as fast, because that's what this car has when you fully tune it. In Gran Turismo 2, the R33 sedan, which incidentally you can buy as a used car, and I'm sorry but I can't recall what the price was, but it wasn't very much, I can remember that, can be tuned up to 716 horsepower, 541 pound-feet of torque, all of course from a 2.6 turbo engine, duh. It's still all-wheel drive, which is fantastic instead of rear-wheel drive. Not that rear-wheel drive is bad, of course, but it's the spirit of a GTR. And the weight is deceptively good. It's lighter than you'd probably assume. When you drop the weight with the full weight loss package, it weighs in at 1,388 kilos. That's pretty good for any sedan, let alone an all-wheel drive one. If you compare that to other all-wheel drive sports sedans, especially of the time, there aren't that many which come close to that, and the ones which do tend to be much smaller ones. So overall, this car, on paper at least, has the makings of greatness, but potentially in a completely different way to a normal Skyline GTR, because I love the Skyline. The R33 is my favourite generation of Skyline, and this one is probably my favourite of them all. Not specifically the Autech version necessarily, but just the four-door version in general. Now, of course, the main advantage of a car like this in the real world is practicality. And if you want to have a good laugh to yourself or put a smile on your face, go on Gran Turismo 2, find this car, buy it, and then read the information about it. Because the write-up that Polyphony gave this car is quite amusing. It's a really good write-up, and there's quite a lot of satire in there, and I enjoyed reading it quite a lot. It actually reminded me of something that I would write about a car, and I liked reading it quite a bit. But the car almost does have this kind of a comedy factor to it. Like, this car shouldn't exist. It's almost like something like a Ferrari FF. Like, of course Ferrari would never make a four-wheel drive wagon as a production car. Maybe a one-off creation for some chic somewhere, but surely not a mass production vehicle. And yet they did, and it's brilliant. Likewise with this one, why would Nissan need to make a four-door R33 Skyline GTR? A Skyline maybe, but a GTR? Surely not. Well, they did, and I'm glad that they did, because this thing is fantastic. Now, usually I don't extol the virtues of Skylines that much, but usually it's because I don't enjoy driving them as much as this. Now, as counterintuitive as it may sound, the extra wheelbase on this car makes it so much more fun, to me, through corners. Now, it's not as fast, of course not. The normal coupe can put down a better lap, but this one, with a totally different kind of centre of gravity and counterbalance for drifting, it can be insane. And just to paint the picture of how good this car is, this one that you can see me driving in the video has the fully tuned specs. 716 horsepower, 1388 kilos. But here's the catch. I did nothing else to it. The suspension, the brakes, the tyres, everything else, even the gearbox, are all stock. So this car is single-handedly and very capably, I might add, coping with way more than double the power that it originally had without even breaking a sweat. So that should tell you everything you need to know about whether or not you should buy one of these in Gran Turismo 2. Personally, I really wish that Polyphony, or even just games in general, would feature more of these 4-door JDM variants, because I absolutely love them, and it's not just a case of liking them, they are good. They are genuinely good, they've got the sleeper appeal to boot. They're great cars, and this one is one of my favourites from Gran Turismo 2 in that kind of category. But that's it for this pick overall. Certainly a car that's worth checking out, and a pretty cheap one too. And I'll see you guys next time. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.